Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs, the show that covers the best action films of all time. I'm your host Cisco from Misfit Minded. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok at misfit_minded, and my website is misfitminded.com.
And I'm your other host, Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
Today we're talking about the 2003 film The Hunted, starring Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro, directed by William Friedkin. If you haven't seen it, it's about an FBI deep woods tracker assigned to find and capture a former assassin who's been killing in cold blood, only to discover the killer was a former pupil. Shani B, are you a fan of this movie? What do you love? What do you hate?
Well, I will say this movie isn't perfect, but I'm a fanny bee. There was enough here to really get me excited. There are like moments in this movie that I find to be both awesome and also confusing. Friedkin as the director is so interesting. I e- like I've watched it a couple times just because there's so much I feel like I'm missing anytime I look away or take a note. And so I guess like the stillness of it all, the gore, the violence, like it's an unpredictable action movie. And I know they all are, but there's something about this one that does make it a little bit more unique. Like the acting is dynamite. There's like a kind of evil presence it feels like he's playing with in terms of, what about real killers, right? Not just like slasher movie killers, but like people whose job and whose life is centered around killing and whether that's like evil or not. But I like the way it's in the frame and in the mood and how the story gets told that way. And of course, I love a good score. So the score was here. I was down for that shit. And yeah, I this movie surprises me. I guess I didn't know how to feel it, but I didn't know how I was going to feel about it. But I really like what Benicio's doing. I really like what Tommy Lee Jones is doing. So I guess like I'm a Fanny B. I'll say I'm a Fanny B. What about you? What did you think?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I watched it a long time ago, but it's been years, and kind of still held up to what I remember it, pretty straightforward. Tommy Lee Jones hunting a guy movie, which he's got a couple of those. So
Sure does.
this one I guess is like more like you said, more gory, more brutal with Benicio. And I also agree with you though that like I don't know, everyone tries to reclaim movies as like underrated, and so this one of course came up on Twitter when Freakin' Die, like this is underrated, and I'm just like, I don't know. I think it's properly rated. I don't uh like you said, there's something missing in it. I don't know if it was like from rewrites where stuff got cut out, but it definitely feels like what you said, like edited down. We don't get a lot between Benicio and Tommy Lee Jones and their relationship and the extent of it. We don't get Benicio del Toro's motivation. Why is he killing these people? So there's just like a lot of questions, and it's I'm fine with nuance and stuff like that, but it just felt like at a certain point it was just two guys running after each other, and
Yeah.
for a majority of the movie, and it's just like I never really say this, but I do kind of wish that it was longer and more fleshed out. This is one of those rare cases where I think the 90 minutes kind of hurts it, where they, especially like in the last 15 minutes, I'm like, check the time, and I was like, oh, there's only one fight left.
Yeah.
Like you said, like I thought I was missing more, but it's like, nope, that's it.
No, that's it's
Yeah,
pretty straightforward actually.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I guess, like, that's what's wild to me too, and, like, where my sort of questions lie is, like, the open itself felt like it was so elaborate that I was sort of like, "What
They
is
blew
this
their
the
whole
only
budget on it.
motivating factor we're gonna get, and is that why he put so much money into it?" Because it does feel
Uh-huh.
like low key, he's sort of like, "Well, enough PTSD will make a murderer out of you," and I don't love that. I don't love that there's not sort of like, well, where did he lose it, right? There's just this idea that he lost it, and that open just felt like it was kinda cheeky and campy, and then when the movie is fully grounded because Tommy Lee Jones is there, it almost feels like a completely different story. Like I always forget the opening sequence is here at all because we see flashbacks of it. So I have no idea why it's there, but but it's like a reminder of this movie being like very randomly disjointed.
I really like the opening though, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's
Let's go. Tell me more.
uh, I don't know, I just like, you never outside of Benicio running away, you never see him in action ever, really.
That's
He's
true.
disappearing and reappearing, and you get glimpses here and there, but I love that in the opening, whatever, 10, 15 minutes, you just get to see him on the mission from beginning to end, taking this dude out, like, okay, we get to see that he's this cold-blooded killer, and yeah, it feels very, like, Metal Gear Solid, that type of,
Yeah.
like, you know, feel of sneaking around, and I can't remember what character says it, but it's like, most of the people that he killed didn't even know he was in the same room as them. I think it was Tommy Lee Jones.
Of course it
Yeah.
was. The king. Of course he
Yeah.
said that shit. Yes. Yeah, I see what you mean because I do feel like Benicio mostly operates as like a ghost later in the
Yeah.
movie, which I also like, but I do see your point to the fact that like we don't get a lot of information about
Yeah.
like what makes him who he is other than that open. And yeah, I guess like that open it feels so detached and the time jump of it all kind of confused me too when they were like it's 99, now it's 03. Like I feel like I wasn't sure again
Listen,
why the time
okay,
jump.
this is all I'm gonna say about it. I'm tired of these movies de-aging actors. It's fine. We're grown adults. We understand that younger Tommy Lee Jones has a mustache and like dark hair, and now Tommy Lee Jones has gray hair and a beard. Like it's not that complicated.
Mhm.
So I was cool with that too. I was fine with the time jump. There's too many fucking Star Wars, fucking Indiana Jones. Don't need it. Stop
It's
it.
true. Well, yeah, I guess, like, this movie also gave me the feels of Friedkin sort of being an old school filmmaker that has sweeping, sets and massive, locations. Like, I'm thinking of the crash scene where, like, the whole street is, like, stopped and the ambulance is knocked over and there's, like, all these people around. That to me screams like old filmmaking where you're really bringing this world to life, but it's also, like, in early 2000s time where that does also sort of feel like it's kind of dying. Like I was surprised how much this movie felt like a movie to me, even though there were parts of it that I didn't quite connect to. I still was like, but this is what it is to take a story that could be explained a million different ways, and for an artist like Friedkin to then choose how he'd like to portray it. And whether I agree or not, at least I can still feel an artist. Like we were talking about with Fuqua, like if I can feel the artist, then I will make a lot of space for other things.
Yeah, I think the reason why I am a fanny B of this as well, it has a lot to do with freaking directing it. Like the lead performances too. Obviously, like Tommy Lee Jones has that role down pat. Benicio brings that intensity to every role. But like you said, Friedkin, I've been trying to fill in some of my blind spots with him, and I keep finding myself drawn to his style of filmmaking. Like you said, like there is a unapologetic, I don't give a fuck what you think. This is my vision. If you don't like it, fuck you. I don't care.
Yeah,
and I kind of and like so I like all of my complaints about they didn't explain it enough or whatever. I'm sure he would just be like, "Fuck yourself." Like I don't. This is my movie. This is what I wanted, and it's just yeah, like we said though, it does feel like there was some either studio interference or stuff got cut. It because it just like you said, it feels disjointed in certain areas. Like Benicio at one point, goes to this women's house with the daughter,
that's right.
and they fucking disappear. We never see them again.
And we don't really understand why they're close to him per se. Like we see they have some established relationship, but not quite.
It felt like this guy is sort of in and out of her life, kind of non-committal relationship, and like that's her daughter but not his daughter, I guess. I don't know.
That's what I was
That's kind of
thinking. I
the
was like,
vibe I was getting from it. But again, nothing really explained in the details. Trying to think what else. Like we got some of the FBI presence. It's kind of like I didn't really need that either. Like you
no.
could have just had at any time that like they're like trying to help Tommy Lee Jones. He's just like, get out of my way. Like, I got this. Like,
Yeah, he's like, "You guys are a bunch of bumbling
yeah.
idiots," and he just very easily kills you guys, like, left and right. I almost love that part in the movie when it goes from, like, we need this big response to Tommy Lee Jones just straight up being like, "Actually, it just needs to be he and I. Like, we just have to duke it
He
out
says, he
because
goes, they're like, what else can we do? And it's like, you guys are messing up the crime scene, actually. Like, if you guys could just leave.
that would be great." Yep.
So,
And I like that. I like how it starts in that huge, sequence in the open, and how ultimately it does boil down to like them in nature, right? Just two men basically defending their own natures, but their own perception of that. Because they're both maybe capable of killing, but Tommy Lee Jones just trains people to kill, and Benicio's been doing a lot of that killing. So it's interesting that it just boils down to two guys slicing the shit out of each other.
yeah, and I do like, some of the more nuanced stuff that actually worked for me is like the characterization you get of like Tommy Lee Jones saving that wolf at the beginning. I fucking love that scene.
Mm.
And then he like goes into the bar and like slams a guy's face on the table.
Yes, yes.
That was so badass. But like again, so you know that this guy, just in that sequence alone, he has a code that he lives by where he does not take any disrespect to nature. Um, but he's in tune with it at the same time. Like he has this kind of like fifth sense, sixth sense or whatever that like he can track people and like he just has this and like so that stuff that's like not explained, but you just see Tommy Lee
Mhm.
Jones's like reaction shots and like him studying the ground and like looking at the trees and shit like that. I was like, I could have used that like the entire movie. Like I could
The
have
vibe,
watched it. Yeah,
yeah.
it was like really effective at capturing that because again, if he's by himself, you don't see him like he's not reporting to anybody about what's going on. You're just seeing the mental process of like, oh, he's like he's close. He's getting
Mhm.
close because of like, and he usually is. He's usually like on his ass the entire movie. Which at a certain point, it got kind of like, is Benicio gonna like do anything? Like, is he gonna
Is he just
like
fucking with this guy?
right? Like you would think like he's like he just keeps running away and running away. I'm like, dude, you'd be better off just like shooting him at a certain point or like
Y yeah,
it
yeah.
just that if I had like one plot hole, that was probably like my biggest one is like he's doing all this like disguising himself and backtracking and going on a
Like,
bicycle and going on a train and
yeah,
going underneath and going in tunnels and going in a river and I'm like,
yeah,
bro,
like,
like
always
if you could just like take him out, like just go in a tree and like snipe this guy, like it would just be so quick, like you'd be good.
yeah. Yeah, he reminds me so much of the Predator because he's like, whispering in the woods, he's like preying on, people who maybe think they're elite or something. Because he's going after hunters, he's going after cops, so in
I
a
was
way, it's
very
not like he's
unclear about that
hunting.
scene too. Like, I was very unclear about the hunters. Like, who were those guys? Like, why did he kill those guys?
That's a good question because I was hoping you might also have
I have
some
no
info on it.
idea.
Because he said he like, when the other guy comes to pick him up, he's like, "Those guys you sent to get me, like, sucked." As if he believed the hunters were there to capture him or kill him,
But
and I
then
guess, like, maybe that's
someone else said that they were just like regular hunters that were just like
yeah.
hunting deer and they just had like way overpowered rifle. But then it seems like they were after like, they were acting like they were chasing after him too.
That's
So it was just
true.
very, like, murky, like, I was just like, "What was their deal?" Like, I don't understand, like
And that again makes me be like, "Okay, so are you saying that this is also in Benicio's head, or are you saying, like,
Yeah,
which
I don't know.
position are you
But it's
taking
not told from
on?"
his perspective either. It's Tommy Lee Jones as the
Exactly.
protagonist, so
But I will say, I like that Tommy Lee Jones as the protagonist has that quality you were talking about where he doesn't disrespect nature. And I think the reason he's able to overcome Benicio in the end is because he respects what he is. Like, he
mm.
doesn't look at him and just think, like, this guy is just a psychopath.
He's a
He's like,
wounded
what
animal.
happened to this guy?
He's a wounded
Yes.
animal.
That's right. That is fucking right.
Yep,
And he's gonna have to risk his life to try to free this wounded animal before more people get murdered.
yep.
But yeah, I will say, like, this was a this was like a powerhouse dynamic where in some of
Mhm.
their scenes together, I was just like, "Oh god, if I could be there in real time watching these 2 guys
Yeah.
go head to head, oh, it would have been
I do like
amazing."
the scene where, again, they don't really explain, but you can kind of feel that, like, Benicio felt, like, abandoned by Tommy Lee Jones' character because he's like, "I wrote you LT, like, did you not get my letters?" And it was just like, "Oh, shit," like
I couldn't tell about that either. Like, at the
Yeah.
end when he had the letters, but the letters looked dirty, I was like, "Did he get
I
them?"
assume that well, actually, I don't know, you're right because 'cause they'd opened the locker they opened his locker. I don't know, I guess my assumption when I watched it was that he did get them, but he just didn't write back
Okay,
because
okay.
he, like, left that part of his life behind. He just trained the guys, he didn't want anything to do with them after
It's
that.
true.
That was kinda like
Yeah.
my and so, like and maybe that's why that he was motivated to do something too, because he kinda knew that he was, like, falling off the handle and from the letters, and that's why he,
Mhm.
like, came back so sudden. I don't know. That's kind of, like, the logic jumping I was doing in my head.
I love it. I mean, you gotta put your executive hat on sometimes
Yeah.
to determine what the decision making might have been, but I think it's probably because they must have tataken things out, they
They
must have
had
rewritten
to.
things. It's not a complete story, like,
They probably were like, "We have to have this be 90 minutes." That's what it felt because it's a 93-minute something movie, and so
there's no way he turned in a 90-minute cut either.
it felt like a
Absolutely not.
producer, like, mandate, and yeah, Freakin' normally doesn't really make those sort of movies, so,
No.
um, yeah, I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah.
to your point about the nature though, like, I really do like the cinematography in this too, like, I meant to look it up, like, where they shot it, but it definitely does look, somewhere in the Pacific, like, Northwest or something like that, or, I don't know, Washington,
Mm,
like, that type of something with a lot of forest area, um,
yeah.
and so,
The
yeah.
moss.
The moss, like, dude, the fucking Benicio jumping out of trees and just on people's backs.
Yeah,
Like you
dude,
said,
he's
Predator. He's
Predator.
Predator, basically, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he totally is. Oh, yeah, it's true. I feel like this is an interesting movie because it must have had some kind of studio funniness. Like, Friedkin obviously is a big director, but the guys that wrote this are like a pair of brothers that were like finance bros before they came to Hollywood and sold a couple movies. And they wrote Collateral, another movie we've covered on here before, but that's it.
Did
That's
we?
all. Yeah, yeah, we did Collateral, for Arnold. The one where his
Oh,
wife got blown up outside the
collateral da
hotel.
no, you're thinking collateral damage.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's what I mean, that's what I
That's the
mean.
one they wrote? 'Cause
Not a yeah,
Collateral's
not
the
the
Michael
good movie
Mann, Tom
Collateral.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we if
That's
I
on
would
me.
have remembered if we covered that because that's a great movie.
Yes, I do mean the Arnold one, Collateral Damage. Thanks for the correction.
Yeah.
But that's it. They've only done these 2 movies, and
What a
that one
weird
I feel like
resume.
is yeah, it's like another case of, the collaboration needing to be there because with great actors like Benicio and Tommy Lee Jones and Friedkin being there, they can't like, the producers can't ruin too much. They can definitely ruin the way the story unfolds, but they can't take away from the filmmaking, and they can't take away from, the weird performance Benicio pulls forward to be this guy. He is his character in this is so unique.
Definitely. I was trying to see if I could find like more like some trivia about this.
Mm.
Um, but my computer's being very slow.
Well,
Uh
there was, like, barely anything on the IMDb. It feels like it must have
yeah.
been yeah, like, shit, I wish I could remember what it was like when this came out. I wish I, like, had enough wherewithal to be like, "Oh, everyone's saying this was a good movie." Like, I wonder how it was received.
I always go by Roger Ebert, so I had to look up his review. Raj gave it 3.5 out of 4. So he pretty much
Oh.
he loved it. Said it was really good. Um yeah, I'm not seeing anything about like stuff being left on the cutting room floor though. Just in my quick look. It does say that this was the last movie Johnny Cash was ever a part of though, which is interesting because he does the opening, narration, closing narration, and the songs.
Also another random part
Yeah.
of this situation, I wasn't sure why those I guess, like, again, they were only there for that, like, thematic thing of Benicio is in some ways Tommy Lee Jones's son in some sense. That's
Mhm.
as close as I can come with it, but it was a really weird way to open and close the movie and then, like, not be a part of it throughout in any meaningful way.
Yeah, and, I'll say the one, criticism that Roger Ebert had, which I thought was really funny, was he was talking about the scene where they both, like, stopped to fashion their own knives at the end, and he was saying that, like, if you were being chased, would you stop to make a fire to forge to forge a knife?
No.
And then what are the chances that Tommy Lee Jones also at the same time would be doing that too? And he was just like, but I understand that this is a movie and that they needed to show that they both can make weapons or something.
Totally. Yeah,
So
yeah. I hear the space given, but that's a good point because I when he was making the fire, I was like, "You can't make a fire. People can see where you are if you make a fire."
exactly.
But then I was like, "Oh, I guess they don't know where they're not near enough to see." But I always thought, like, when I first saw this movie and when I rewatched it, my first thought was like, "Oh, that's right. Tommy Lee Jones will see the fire and know where to go." But then that doesn't ever happen.
This is
That's not it.
this is funny trivia, and I can corroborate this because I've heard Friedkin speak on this. It says to the great annoyance of William Friedkin, Benicio del Toro would often ply the director with questions about his character's motives and backstory that Friedkin had no interest in. The only the only direction that Tommy Lee Jones needed, by contrast, was when and where to hit his marks. So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
that's
That's
Friedkin's
so good.
that's Friedkin's style, and yeah, he said like that was the type of actor that he looked for, was the Tommy Lee Jones, not the Benicio. Like that's your shit. Like I'm not.
That is yeah, it's a kind of style of acting for sure.
Yeah,
And I think maybe you can even see that in when they're working together, like,
yeah.
there is something about how what makes Tommy Lee Jones so good is you can see that he is listening to the other person he's talking to, like,
Hmm.
you can see him react in real time authentically, even though obviously we know making a movie is not in real time, it still feels that way, and there is something about how, like, Benicio is always like, "I float." I don't walk across the ground in any character I play. I
Yeah,
float as like this sort of real, but not quite real guy. And somehow, like, that does make him always something I want to watch and see what he's going to do. But it's an interesting, like, on edge choice for someone like Friedkin, who's like, I'm not really here to direct actors. Like, I just want actors to be where I want them to be in my frame, you know?
yeah. It's a good point. I mean, he got lucky like by casting the two of them though. I'll say, but yeah, couldn't be like more different guys in real life. So I think that that contrast is so funny. I just I was thinking like every time I thought this movie would like it's like right on the edge of being great, I would say.
Yeah.
Like it's good, bordering on great. But anytime they had a chance to be great, like I said, it would skip over stuff and like go to the next scene. And it was like
Yep.
so there was like kind of this shadowy figures that like bailed him out of jail, Benicio at the beginning. I forgot about that Benicio gets caught at the beginning. I was like, holy
Hmm.
shit, I do not remember this part. Uh,
It's
and
wild.
yeah, and then like there's like this whole interrogation and stuff like that. And Benicio has this like back and forth, being like, what if, humans were not the top of the food chain, blah, blah, blah. And then they take him away. They basically bail him out because he's like officially dead to the government working. And so we assume he's working for the government. He's a government weapon. And then he breaks out of the van and escapes. And so those agents were dead. And I was like, so that could have been a story in itself. Was like him getting revenge on the shadowy figures that are using him as a weapon.
Hmm.
But then that was it. They're dead. so
Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
not really an antagonist because you know what I mean. Like so then
Yeah, that's
it's
what stifles me because I
it's
can't
weird.
decide, like, are you talking about how, like, Benicio can't tell the difference because he's killed too much? Or are you talking about how, like, the paranoia of a war zone and the paranoia of killing all these people is actually making him see that when it's not there. And I guess we don't really get to do any of that because we're still in this sort of cat and mouse space just between the two of them. But I will say I love that sequence for how like effortlessly Benicio disappears. He's like, get help.
Oh,
Like,
that yeah,
I'm just moving
that
slowly
was pretty
towards
badass.
the forest line. Like, yeah, there were those little moments, I think, were what helped me be like, oh, that's okay. This is a
I
cool
think
moment. So,
so, and then in that scene, he puts on the clothes of one of the officers,
mm-hmm.
because it's like it's very like baggy, and you could tell he just did it like last second. But it's
Yep,
like to trick the people outside that he's not a convict, like he's not a prisoner. So that's like again,
exactly.
that's one of those more nuanced things that I like. That like they don't have to explain, but it's just like he's so quick on his feet that he can do that
Exactly.
shit. Yeah.
Exactly, they're, like, showing you that he still has the elite, skills, and I guess that's part of why I'm so interested is, like, w he has these elite skills, he has so much good wherewithal in a lot of ways. I wanna know more about why he's killing people, you know? Like, I want to know more, and I think maybe that's, like, one extra piece that would have been nice is if, like, even if Tommy Lee Jones wasn't aware of it, if there was some person that was like, "Yeah, those guys in the woods were there to kill him." So, he started by killing people who truly were there to get him, and then he got lost.
It
You know,
needed
like
like a confrontation at the end, like where they have the knife fight, where him and Tommy Lee Jones like hash it out, and like Benicio explains his what he's been doing, but they just go straight to the knife fight, which is great, which is a cool
it is
knife
great.
fight. It's pretty badass, but like that's when you and so like my whole reference the whole time when I was thinking about is First Blood, Rambo
Y
Part
yeah,
1,
uh-huh,
and what do they have at the end of that but Sylvester
and amazing.
Stallone doing the
Mhm.
monologue at the end of the movie explaining, why he's doing what he's been doing, so
Yeah.
that's, like, one thing where it's like they missed the mark on that, even though, like, this is very similar to First Blood in a lot of ways.
Well, and I guess, like, that's the interesting part of it too, as, like, a pair for this is that First Blood gets to be from Stallone's perspective, and it's true, this one being only from Tommy Lee Jones's perspective is interesting because I don't actually feel like he gets any closure either. Like, it's not as though
No.
he had an awareness that he was training a psychopath back then and had to, like, live with that and now could finally know that, like, people are safe again, right? Like, he was just, like, living his life, enjoying himself when someone showed up and made him come back to work. And then, he had to almost get killed, getting sliced like nobody's business to kill somebody. And then he's just like looking at the snow
I like
again.
to think that this is the same character he is in The Fugitive and U.S. Marshal, where he just doesn't care. Like you
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
he's just doing his job. I don't care.
It must be. It must be that
uh,
that's what it is. Ah, but nobody does it like him. Nobody does it like him,
yeah,
man. God, I love him. Yeah, I mean, like, what was is there a sequence in particular that really stood out to you? Like something where, like, the ambulance crash or like the open, like, is there something in the open that really stands out to you? Because so much is happening. There is so much happening in that open. It's hard to keep up with.
I do love the open. It does feel like a war movie, like inserted into this. I like how he's sneaking around, very light on his feet, like the way he crawls down from the ceiling is so smooth.
So sick.
Yeah, and then, yeah, taken out and it's so brutal, that's the other thing. It's like it opens up and these civilians are being shot and, like,
Totally genocide.
genocidal, like, murder happening, and so it's like, at that point, you're kind of like, "Yeah, Benicio fucked this guy up because it's like they show the guy that ordered the hits. Um, so I would say the opening. I would also like to shout out to though the part where the 2 hunters he takes out the 2 hunters. I think is also like really impressive with it's just an it's he's they're doing the ghost thing where he's like appearing and reappearing, but then like you see him throw the knife and he's like toying with them almost like my knife versus your 2 guns, stuff like that, and then they get caught in the trap. That one guy gets caught in the trap and
So nasty,
I
dude.
know. And yeah, he's just murking fools. So, and I think why those two I would pick is just like those feel like more justified than like when he's straight up killing cops. towards the
Yeah.
end, and it's like, oh shit, like you just killed what we like are assume are like good cops. Like there's nothing that tells us that they're
Yeah,
just doing
totally
their
fine.
jobs. Like and I think
Yep.
the black dude is like the lieutenant. So like you kill the fucking like lieutenant too. Like it was
Yes.
pretty yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I will say Connie Nielsen does a good job sort of being that person that reminds us that like there are people who have no idea that like this world of super spy murderers like exists, and she's like there left covered in the blood of like all her coworkers who have been murdered by him, crying, and it's like, yeah, cuz that's the
that's
truth. Is that like these
what you would
guys,
do. Yeah.
yeah,
Your
they
two partners slash friends.
right in your arms. Because I think I really like that sequence when they're underground and he's just taking them all out, and the one guy he like has killed the
Yeah, that's
construction
true.
worker or something, kind of propped him up to trick them. That sequence is really cool, but it is needless. I
Yeah.
guess like that sequence is an interesting one because it does make you be like, okay, I might have understood where Benicio was coming from with the hunters and then also the military guys, but when he starts to kill all these other regular cops that are just like some basic ass city cops or whatever,
And the army
now
guys.
I'm kind of like, all
And the
right,
army guys
you'll have
too.
to die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can't come through this one and just like go to jail because you've really done some bad shit now.
And Tommy Lee Jones tells him that too, like, "You gotta turn yourself in." Like, there's no you gotta pay for this, like, there's no, getting away from this, so, um, I also like too, I like the where Tommy Lee Jones was saying, like, how he figures out that it's him. He's like, "I noticed from his size 10 footprint, no tread, kinda like this one, kinda like a slipper."
Yeah.
And I just was like, "That feels, like, so impractical." I mean, like, I guess in the mud, like, that would be the traction, but I'm just like, walking around with no tread just, like, seems like a nightmare to me, like,
It
Jesus.
really does. But I will say, it does seem like Tommy Lee Jones doesn't walk around that much because he's like straight crawling and rolling through the ground when he's first looking for Benicio, which I love. It's just, it is funny how I don't know how much of it is like real and how much of it is sounded cool or seemed cool. Because it does seem like this movie is like less about educating us on what it's like to be a deep woods tracker or what
Yeah,
it's like to be, a killer for the military. It's sort of much more interested in like, what does it look like when you're watching one of these guys?
yeah. You just came across 2 bears in the forest just fucking fighting it out. Papa Bear and
Yeah.
his son.
I mean, that might be another thing that I identify as something I like about what Friedkin can do is that like even though he has a whole room in a frame sometimes, his camera feels much more like a fly on the wall than most. Like it's not quite a character in his filmmaking. It really is like I'm capturing a lot of private moments that nobody else is there for in my filmmaking. And I love that because I guess like I can only compare it to sort of like how it feels to watch The Exorcist is so different than how it feels to watch other horror movies, and how it felt watching this action movie. I was like, this movie is, of course, in the action genre, but like, it's a psychological thriller or something, you know?
Yeah, it fits in there too. Yeah, I also wanted to mention too the car chase I thought was really well done.
Baller.
Too when Benicio, like when you were talking about the old school filmmaking part of it, like you see fucking Benicio peel out crazy, jumping over shit like over curbs and stuff like that, and it just felt like the French Connection director, making another cool car chase here in the middle of this movie. So yeah, that
And
was
we
cool.
never see meaningful car chases except for like when the homie Michael Bay shows up. Like he'll always bring them for us, but we don't really
And
see
the
them so
Fast and
much anymore.
Furious franchise.
But even there, they've
Occasionally.
taken over. Yeah, I was gonna say they've, like, mostly used computers now because they
Yeah.
wanna do such, like, wild shit, but that's what's cool about this movie is it still exists in a time where people really did smash the shit out of cars, just because, right? Like, for the shot, and I do love that kinda stunt element because, there were more surprising stunts in here than I was ready for, and I think, like, what comes to mind is it really looked like Tommy Lee Jones jumped off that roof for real. I know he didn't, but it really looked like it
You
the way it was
could
cut.
you could see the stunt guy. I could, at least. I mean, I've just seen enough
But
action movies, I guess, but, like and
the capturing of it,
the tell is always, like, when they pan out and it's, like, at when the fall
gotta be
happens
wide.
and they go wide, yeah,
I
that's
love
when you
it.
can tell it's a stunt guy, and so, yeah, I could tell that was
But
but
Tommy Lee Jones, like, never does anything close to stunt work, so the fact that he's, like, on
that's
this
what's so
roof.
funny about it is, like, every time, like, he has to run and chase after him, he looks, like, pissed off, like, "You're making me fucking do cardio."
Yep, yep. I mean, for real. Yeah. Yeah, he's like, "I like to lie in waiting, not be in a chase." And it is but you know what? He holds his own because I will say I do like the train sequence too, where he's, like, on top of the
Oh,
train,
yeah.
chasing him through there as
That was
well.
very, US Marshals, actually. I always get those confused, but, Wesley Snipes jumps on the train in US Marshals, yeah.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, there's
very
gotta
US
be a train
Marshals.
in a good action movie, no matter
Yeah,
which
we
one it
talked
is.
about this before, but trains, action movie staple.
Yep.
So yeah, speaking of stunts, I feel like we're here. What stunt or set piece really stuck out to you if you had to pick one?
I mean, I think, I guess, like yeah, I think the sequence of that, like, first capture when they first reunite with each other and kinda, like, fight, and I think it's the stunt choreography that, like, wins in terms of stunt work just because the fight sequences, they are really thrilling, and several times because they were fighting with, like, knives and stuff,
Mhm.
anytime there was, like, a slice or something, several times out loud, I'd be like, "Oh, shit,"
Yeah.
like, because you don't need to see that. But I do think the best stunt is surviving the final fight for TLJ because he took a knife right here.
Yeah.
And if I remember from Drive, that's where a single cut can help you bleed out. So I felt a little confused, but I liked the stunt of like a
Different
knife going all the
universes,
way.
you know?
Yeah,
In the
that's true.
Hunted universe, it doesn't, okay?
That's right. Tommy Lee Jones is superhuman in many ways. But yeah, I think, that one sequence and then also the ending fight sequence, just the choreography, was my favorite of the stunt work here. What about you?
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, mine is, like, I guess, like, a half and half. It's like another setup payoff thing. So
Mhm.
half of it is when they show the flashback of Tommy Lee Jones training Benicio del Toro, and
Love
he
that.
shows the, 1, 2, 3, 4 double hand, whatever, through the sternum, 5,
Yep.
6. It was like the 6-point cut or whatever. Oh, and then ending with
Love
the
it.
chin, beneath the chin or
Yep.
whatever. And
And
so
then doing it so
and
fast.
like you said, like, most filmmakers, it would be like cut 1, cut 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever. And it's like you're seeing every single like I was like nervous for the guy that he was gonna catch a knife in his chin. Like it
Yeah.
looked like so fucking real. So I
Mhm.
really like that scene. And then I like how it gets like kind of paid off when Tommy Lee and Benicio fight like the first time when they're it's like again to the choreography of it. It's so messy and ugly and dirty and rolling around and
Love
it's
it.
not clean. He's trying to punch the knife in and then Tommy Lee is like punching the knife out of his hand. Like it's just so like it feels to me like what a fight would actually look like in real life compared to like
Agreed.
a lot of the action movies that we talk about on here. So
Yeah,
that's
like,
why yeah.
there's none of that waiting to hit each other
Right.
stuff. I think that's what stood out the most to me that, like, the fight scenes feel relentless,
Mhm.
like, there is no pause, and I can never tell who's winning a lot of the time too.
Yeah, it's like because and the fact that they're equally skilled, like, it always felt like it was, like, a good matchup, like you
Mhm.
said, like, one wasn't getting the upper hand on the other at any time. It was just like one person had a good move here, and then the other person countered with another good move, it's like yeah.
And I will say about the bespoke weapons they brought to the final showdown, they did also, like, represent their characters, that in the end, Tommy Lee Jones was like, "It's the resources and the resilience of what is around me that I can make with my hands in nature
Mhm.
that is what helps me survive these types of things." And it's like Benicio's desire to I guess just to inflict his will now because he's disappointed in, whatever means he chose, like, a much more like knife's knife,
Yeah.
and it made me think of that show
Metal
where
versus, like, rock. Like, rock
yeah,
versus metal, yeah.
Yeah, 2 great, forces coming at one another, but all I could think of was that show where dudes make, like, knives and swords and shit, and I kept hearing, like, this one guy's voice in my head who's like, your knife is good. It will kill." I don't know if you are familiar with Forged in Fire, I think is what it's called?
Okay.
Uh, I found it on Netflix, like, just one day. I was like, "I'm just gonna see what this is about," and people make all their own weapons, so I
That's a
that's the only
pretty
way I know
it's a
anything
pretty
about
sick
it.
knife. It's not like, again, sorry to compare it, but it's not Rambo level knife,
Mhm.
um, or even Commando, like those I feel like those are just going for the bigger the better, honestly,
Totally.
but
Yeah.
I like the simple design of it, and then he was saying that, like, one side is for filleting and the other side is for cutting, so that was, like, the dual
Mhm.
purpose of it, and that's his
So dope.
trademark too, like, that he puts it into the trees, so, yeah.
Yeah, and he, like, slices people's, like, faces
Yeah,
and stuff,
yeah,
like, oh yeah, the way he is teasing and kinda cat and mousing any of his victims, even Tommy Lee Jones, is pretty baller.
mhm,
I do like that about this movie for sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Nice. Alright, cool. Let's see, what else?
got the
Oh, yeah,
kills.
do you have a favorite kill? I was gonna say, what's your favorite kill?
I think this one's pretty easy, it has to be just Benicio getting it at the end, it's by a waterfall, 2 guys fighting with knives, it's, like, pretty simple shit. It's pretty cool. And, again, it's, like, round 2 to where, I would say Tommy Lee gets bested in the first fight. The only reason Benicio got caught is because the FBI showed up. But
That's right.
then when they do the rematch at the end, Tommy Lee kinda gets his payback and, shows that he's the true master. So that's gonna be my kill. And I think what does he knife him in the chest? I think that's what he
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm pretty sure he gets the
Yeah.
assist to make sure to get
Yep.
it in there. Oh,
What
yeah,
about
that
you?
is a good one. For me, it's the, forced cyanide pill. When he's with all the guys that bailed him out of jail, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Hey, here, take this pill because, you need to kill yourself since all
Wasn't
you've
it, like,
done."
up the nose, though? It was, like, weird. Yeah, I've
It
never
was like
seen one
some
of those.
kinda
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's why it stood out to me where I was like, he's slicing everybody else up, like, doing really cool blood stunts, and this one's just like a nice slow
Yeah.
type of thing, and I love that about it.
I can't remember the exact line, but when he was just like, "It's painless, you won't feel a thing," or whatever, and then when Benicio gets it back, he says the same thing, like, "It's painless, you won't feel a thing." Puts the
Yeah. It's so good
Yeah,
how, like, I can't describe, like, what I think about Benicio's acting other than there is
unpredictable.
no other actor I can compare him to. Like, when I look at movies in the past, he has no comp,
Yeah,
and I can't see any young actor that I'm like, "Oh, this is a new Benicio," right? Like,
incomparable.
nobody like him. It's true,
He
it's
is
true.
a big reason why Sicario, I feel like, is one of the best action movies of, like, the last, 5, 10 years. He's just so,
Yeah.
like like, we talk about how menacing he is here, but in that movie, it's like, you do not wanna fuck with this guy. This guy will kill you and your family,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, he
without
will. Yeah,
blinking an
and nothing
eye.
will get in his way.
Yeah,
Mhm,
it's
that's right.
just
Nothing will
so
stop him from the laser focus that he has on you sometimes.
yeah, so I'm with you. He's a really good actor. I appreciate him.
Yes. Oh, and TLJ, like this, Tommy Lee Jones is always good. And so I think in this one in particular, obviously
Yeah,
Benicio stands out a little bit more. But I do just love that you can count on Tommy Lee Jones's performance, no matter where he is. You can count on him to always deliver something grounded, whether we're doing Men in Black or we're doing this. And I am about that life because he's a real like actor with a capital A, and so is Benicio. And Friedkin was a director with a capital D. So all good things,
yeah, exact
all good
I need
things.
Liam Neeson to step into that, Tommy Lee Jones role. He wants to be Charles Bronson and Clint Eastwood so bad, and it's like, maybe do, like, a mentor movie where you're passing on to the next actor, action movie, stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know who that would be, but, like, I'm just like, "It's time, bro." Like, Liam, you've done, like,
I'm excited
100
to think
action
about it.
movies. Like, how many Taken spinoffs are you gonna do?
Well, and also, like, you're getting too old for this shit, not even in a rude way. Like, at a certain point, I don't wanna be afraid that a beloved friend of mine is gonna get beat up because he looks too old and frail.
Yeah.
Like, I do want that grounded,
He has a
expertise that
great
Tommy Lee
voice and
Jones
a great
offers.
presence, like, that's what I'm saying, he has that
Exactly.
Tommy Lee Jones thing, he could
He's
do
got it
it.
all.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, I feel like I'm sure there'll be another Liam Neeson's movie coming out soon because he
He has
churns those
one.
things out.
He has one where it's
Right
like
now? Is it out
yeah.
right now?
Mhm. It's like
Shit, I'll have to go see it.
I guess it's like, a speed comp where if he slows down, the car explodes. He's in a car the whole time, something like that with his family, of course.
Well, I would much rather rewatch Speed, but I love Liam Neeson forever.
So,
Nice,
I will
nice.
say that movie, I'm not probably not gonna see it, but, he was on Conan O'Brien's podcast, and it was delightful. He is hilarious. You can always tell which guy is really funny by how much they make Conan O'Brien laugh, and Conan was belly laughing the whole time. It was so awesome.
That makes me so
You gotta
happy.
watch
Oh,
it
I
or
love that.
listen to it. It's so good. Yeah, it was a
I
good
will. I will
interview.
check that out. I love them both, so that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Anything else you want to add before we finish up?
No, I think that wraps it up. So let's get our plugs in and get out of here. Remind the people where to find us.
All right. Follow the show at We Stay Buff on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch so you never miss a minute of the action. And follow me personally at It's Me, Shani B on all those platforms as well.
All right. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you have time, please leave a positive review. It helps us. 5 stars, please. And for my movie pages at misfit_minded on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and my website is misfitminded.com. I'm also on Blue Sky now. I just joined
Nice.
up. I got an invite code, and yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Cool.
I'm just
Sounds good.
testing the waters. So
Keep us updated.
testing the skies, I guess. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you next time for another edition of Movie Buffs. Stay buff.